Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our very first live streaming service. I hope you're all comfy at home, staying safe, keeping clean. And we're going to have a little bit of time of worship, and you will find that on YouTube you can make some comments, you can leave some thumbs up. Feel free to share whatever's on your heart during this time of worship. And I'm just going to pray, and we're going to commit this time to the Lord. So, Father, I just want to thank you. Just thank you for your presence, Lord. I thank you that, even with the whole social distancing, we can come together. We can have, a time of, spending just quality time in your presence, Lord, and worshiping you. Father, I pray that you will fill every single one of us with your presence, that we would be really able to engage as we worship, that we will lift your name up, Lord, this morning, God, as a church, as we come together, Lord, in many different ways, Lord. So we just commit this time to you, Lord. It's all about you, and it's all for your glory. In Jesus' name.
Let's worship together. Let our praise be your welcome. Let our songs be a sign we are here for you. We are here for you. Let your breath come from heaven, fill our hearts with your life. We are here for you. We are here for you. To you our hearts are open, nothing here is hidden. You are our one desire. You alone are holy, only you are worthy. God, let your fire fall down. Let us shout the your anthem, your renown, fill the skies. We are here for you. We are here for you. Let your word bring in power. Let what's dead come to life. We are here for you. We are here for you. To you our hearts are open, nothing here is hidden. You are our one desire. You alone are holy, only you are worthy. God, let your fire fall down. Let us shout. Let us shout, be your anthem, your renown, fill the skies. We are here for you. We are here for you. Let your word move in power. Let what's dead come to life. We are here for you. We are here for you. To you our hearts are open, nothing here is hidden. You are our one desire. You alone are holy, only you are worthy. God, let your fire fall down. promises are yes and amen. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you for your faithfulness, Lord Jesus. Lord, thank you for your faithfulness. I will rest in your promises. My confidence is your faithfulness. I will rest in your promises. My confidence is your faithfulness. Thank you, Lord. Let's just begin to thank God for His faithfulness in our lives. Thank you, God, for your faithfulness. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Thank God, I look to you. God, I look to you. I won't be overwhelmed. Give me vision to see things like you do. God, I look to you. You're where my help comes from. Give me wisdom. You know just what to do. God, I look to you. God, I look to you. I won't be overwhelmed. Give me vision to see things like you do. God, I look to you. You're where my help comes from. Give me wisdom. You know just what to do. I will love you. I will love you, Lord, my strength. I will love you, Lord, my shield. I will love you, Lord, my rock. Forever all my days, I will love you, God. God, I look to you. God, I look to you. I won't be overwhelmed. Give me vision to see things like you do. God, I look to you. You're where my help comes from. Give me wisdom. You know just what to do. I will love you, Lord, my strength. I will love Hallelujah, our God reigns. Hallelujah, our God reigns. Hallelujah, our God reigns. Forever all my days. Hallelujah.
Yes, you reign. Yes, you reign, O Lord. Yes, you reign. Yes, you reign. Yes, Lord.
In Christ alone. In Christ alone, my hope is found. He is my life, my strength, my song. This cornerstone, this solid ground, firm through the fiercest drought and storm. What heights of love, what depths of peace, when fears are stilled, when striving cease. My comforter, my all in all, here in the love of Christ I stand. In Christ alone, who took on flesh, fullness of God in helpless babe, this gift of love and righteousness, strong by the ones who came to save, till on that cross, as Jesus died, the wrath of God was satisfied. For every sin on him was laid, here in the death of Christ I live. There in the ground his body lay, light of the world by darkness slain, then bursting forth in glorious day, up from the grave he rose again, and as he stands in victory, since Christ has lost his grip on me, for I am his and he is mine, bought with the precious blood of
good morning. Hey, good morning once again. That is an interesting experience for all of us, isn't it? But it's such a strong sense of the presence of God in the room now. It's five of us here at the Gateway Center, and as you know, we were worshiping, I just really felt a great sense of His presence. And I know that some of you are making comments there on the chat. That is great to see so many of you. And before we get into the Word of God, I just want to welcome you guys. It's great to see that you're following us live, and it's just an amazing experience. And different times. So we're going to make the most of it. So I hope you're all sitting nicely and comfy at home. Just a quick survey before we start. How many of you have come to church in your pajamas? Put some thumbs up there. Are you still in your PJs? I'm glad the camera can only pick me up from the chest up, and I haven't come in my pajamas today. All right. So the song that we were singing just now, I think is just so amazing, to think about the truth that no power of hell, no scheme of man can ever pluck us from His hand. And that is a fact. No matter the situation we're living in, that is a fact. Okay, so just solving some technicalities as we go along. All right, very good. All right, so I'm hoping to share a little bit of the Word of God with you guys, and hopefully I will not take too long, and you can carry on enjoying the rest of your days. It's not that you're going out or anything. A lot of people are confined to their homes, but that's okay. So the question really, a lot of people are asking themselves is, how do we stay mentally, physically, and spiritually healthy in such a time as this? And we are living really unusual times, and some of us, were caught up by surprise in all of this. And the most common result of being in such a situation is anxiety, is fear, is panic, with the whole panic buying and all that stuff. It can be really difficult to deal with all of that. And I don't know, everyone is aware of panic buying, but I don't know if anyone heard of panic holidaying. It's interesting because I was watching the news, actually. I think it was last week or a couple weeks ago, because some of the low budget airlines were still flying, and there were some young guys buying plane tickets because they were very, very cheap, and just going on holiday, visiting friends, and things like that. And one of the guys at the airport that was just about to go on a holiday trip, during the whole pandemic, and the reporter asked him, about why he was doing that, and about all the danger and everything, all the risk, and he was saying, "Now you live once, let's just make the most of these difficult times. So on social media, you will find tips on how to stay healthy, physically, mentally. There are physical exercises you can do. On YouTube, you can come across the coronavirus workout. I don't know if you've tried that one before. There are also mental exercises that you can do. I remember watching an interview with a British guy. He is a teacher living in Wuhan, and he was confined to his home, and he was just sharing some of the things that he was doing in order to keep himself, mentally healthy. And when he was trying to, he was learning a language, he was, picking up a new hobby, trying to learn an instrument. There are different things that we can do in order to, keep our minds occupied and stay healthy. Now, God is not only interested in our spirit, but He is interested in ourselves as a whole. So how do we keep our minds and our body and our spirit as well healthy? The World Health Organization defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. And mental health is the emotional and spiritual resilience which allows us to enjoy life and survive pain, disappointment, and sadness. So we tend to think that we are, we're pretty healthy. Most of the times, I guess, I would consider myself as a healthy guy. But when we find ourselves in a situation, like this, in such a challenging, time, for a long period of time, it is kind of difficult, to know how we are actually going to react in the long run. So it is important to stay healthy. And God is fully aware that we are flesh and bones, and He knows that we're limited, and it is okay to freak out from time to time. Actually, later on, I'm going to give you a quick guide on how to, freak out the proper way. What's the right way, to freak out? I'm going to give you a little guide on that later on. Now, even great men of God, had their freak out moments, and we can identify with some of these guys, and we can learn, positive lessons from what they've been through. And there is an episode in the life of Elijah when he freaks out, and we see God's care for him, not only caring for his spirit, but also for his mind, for his body. And it's interesting that Elijah's name means, God the Lord, the strong Lord. And he is first mentioned in 1 Kings 17. And in that chapter, Elijah suddenly appears during Ahab's reign to proclaim this drought in punishment of the cult of Baal that Jezebel, Ahab's wife, was promoting in Israel. So just a little bit of context here. So Jezebel and her priests and prophets propagated their pagan religion with the consent of the king, and as a result, the Israelites accepted Yahweh and Baal as their gods and treated them both as equal, no difference between them. Now, the policies imposed by Jezebel and her evil crew resulted in the weakening of people's faith in Yahweh. So that is when Elijah steps in, and he says that there will be no dew or rain, during the next few years until I give the word. That is Elijah speaking. Now, after giving that word, God tells Elijah to self-isolate. Interesting. And there, in the brook where Elijah is spending time, isolated, God provides him with physical food and drink. Actually, we have here evidence in the Bible that hamburgers are very biblical. The ravens, it says here, that they brought in bread and meat. So I would recommend during this time of self-isolation, you go for burgers from time to time, because it's biblical food. Now, when Elijah was tired of eating hamburgers, God tells him to go to Zarephath because he commanded this widow to look after him. And when he's with the widow, Elijah eats cake. There you go, another biblical food for you in times of desperation. You know, the Bible is always helpful, not only to restore our spirit, to strengthen us, but anyway. So while in the widow's house, not only do they experience God's provision, because they didn't run out of food, but also they experienced restoration. When the widow's son falls ill and dies, God brings him back to life. So they have this whole experience, together in that house. And it's only later on in chapter 18 that Elijah meets Ahab face to face. And by this time, there was a great famine in the land due to the lack of rain. Remember, chapter 17, Elijah said, no rain, no dew. And when Ahab sees Elijah, he says to him, "Oh, it's you, troublemaker of Israel. You're the one who caused all this. Look, we're in trouble because of that word that you gave, that drought was going to come." Now, what happens here is interesting, is that I think it's one of my favorite passages really in the Old Testament is just just the boldness, the courage of Elijah. He challenges the prophets of Baal to a showdown in front of all Israel on top of Mount Carmel. And we can find that in 1 Kings 18:20. And we read that, about God's tremendous victory on top of Mount Carmel. And as a result, the prophets of Baal were praying, and they couldn't, get an answer. And, you can read all about it, all the details. I'm not going to go into the details because that's not really the point here. But the result is that we see God's tremendous victory and, God's response to Elijah's prayer and just his manifestation of power, just to, so people would know that he is the one true living God. Yahweh and Baal cannot, be at the same level, definitely. And that it gets very, very clear to the people of, the people that are there on top of Mount Carmel. And as a result, Elijah commands the people to execute all prophets of Baal. And right after that, Elijah then gives the word and brings the drought to an end. That is when the drought comes to an end. Now, Ahab's wife, Jezebel, she wasn't present at the Mount Carmel, big showdown. But her husband, tells her all about what happened and how the prophets of Baal were, humiliated, and Yahweh, manifested his presence and his power, and he was just amazing. And not only were, the prophets of Baal humiliated, but they were also completely decimated. And we read there that Jezebel went completely manic. She lost all her marbles and threatened to kill Elijah's life. So this woman threatened to kill Elijah because of what he did. Now, even after all Elijah had witnessed, after all he had experienced, the giving the word for the drought, and the drought starting, just the provision that he experienced when he was, led to isolate, God, the ravens bringing him food and drink, and later on, the provision that he experienced at the widow's house, the food, that would not run out, the restoration of the widow's son's life. He was dead and he was brought back to life. Even after experiencing all of that, he grew fearful his life. He grew fearful for his life, and he ran away. So 1 Kings 19:3 says that he ran for his life. So this woman, Jezebel, threatened him. I'm going to end you, dude, for what you've done. And he was scared, and he ran for his life. Now Elijah was showing some signs of anxiety and depression to the point of suicide. We know that he sat under, the tree, and verse 4 in chapter 19 that he went into the wilderness. He sat under a broom tree and asked God to take his life. So he went from mountaintop to rock bottom because Jezebel threatened to kill him. Now, I guess, some psychiatrists today would probably label Elijah as a bipolar depressive with suicidal tendencies. But he was just a man, frail, limited, and put under a lot of pressure, like many of us from time to time, and like many of us, during a time as this. Now, God could have been harsh on Elijah. Yeah, come on, did you forget, about what we did on Mount Carmel? Pull yourself together, man. Look at all that you've been through. This amazing experience that you had of my power, of my presence, of everything that I do. Come on, chop. There's, get out of that. But instead, God puts Elijah to rest. When Elijah wakes up, God sends an angel to feed him. Elijah is still not 100%, and he gets some more sleep, and he wakes up. God sends the angel to give him more food. And now God was fully aware of Elijah's human limitations, and he respected that. And once Elijah was fully restored, he's sent on this 40-day journey to Mount Horeb, which is Mount Sinai, where God gave, gave the law to Moses and the Israelites. And it's there, in that mountain, in one of the caves where he is that God, he reveals himself to Elijah in an unprecedented way. Now, in the ancient world, the wind, the earthquake, the fire, they were all recognizable elements of the visible manifestation of God to mankind. And we have some examples there. For example, in Exodus 19, we read that on Mount Sinai, when God was about to give Moses the law, there were thunderings, there were lightnings, and there was the sound of loud trumpets, and that could all be, heard by everyone, and everyone trembled. Also in Job chapter 38, God spoke to him out of the whirlwind, and there are many other examples of, this just the loud manifestation of God's power and his presence. But here, in that moment of self-isolation, of social distancing, is when Elijah has this revelation, this experience of God that is completely unparalleled and unprecedented. It's that gentle whisper. God is speaking in the reverberating silence, that follows a turbulent disaster. So I really believe that, the time that we're living in, that we have to distance ourselves from each other, and we have to, some of us are in self-isolation and all of that. My prayer is that we would have just a fresh encounter with the Lord, just a new revelation, like Elijah did, something unprecedented, something unparalleled, something that you've never even heard of before. So I just really want to encourage you, in this time that you would, set your hearts, set your face to seek God, during this time with that hunger. God, I want to experience something new. I want to have a new and fresh revelation of who you are, like never before. So Elijah was a great man of God, and still he freaked out. That is fine. It is okay to freak out. Before I carry on, let me see. Oh, I got quite a few comments here. Someone had burgers last night. It's amazing. Okay. Oh, my dad is watching from Brazil. It's amazing. People are speaking amongst themselves. That is great. Very good. Excellent. All right. So I think it's about time that maybe I gave you some tips on how to freak out properly. If you've been freaking out the wrong way, okay, stop that. And let's see if we can freak out properly, because it's okay to freak out. Yeah, we don't know how long we're going to be in this situation. But a lot of people who do not know the Lord, they are desperate, they are freaking out. And my prayer is that, in those moments of this despair, that they will have an encounter, with the living God, with the living hope. But what is really the right way to freak out? Now, in mental health, there's a term that is used to describe how we manage stress, and it's called stress container. So I actually brought my stress container with me, and it says here, empty regularly. So the size of your container really represents your tolerance to stress. Some people have a high tolerance, they have the ability to cope with stress, and some people have a low tolerance, don't have like a great ability to deal and cope with stress, and that is unique to each person. People have different size stress containers. But we all need a coping mechanism, and the coping mechanism here is represented by this tap. I don't have a proper tap, but that is just to represent the release, that this container needs to have some sort of release. And that release can be done, through physical exercise, mental exercise, eating and sleeping well. I said burgers are biblical, but I would recommend them every day. Although cake is good. Cake is all right every day. But ultimately, we know that we are encouraged to release that stress at the feet of Jesus. Yeah? We have that. We can freak out, but the right way to freak out is to come to the Lord with our stress containers, knowing that we can turn the tap all the way and release that stress at the feet of the Lord. 1 Peter 5, verse 7 says, cast your worry and your anxiety upon him, for he cares for you. The Passion Translation puts it like this: pour out all your worries and stress upon him and leave them there, for he always tenderly cares for you. And Jesus did that, didn't he, when he was on earth? Yeah? He had a stress container, and I believe that many times, when he withdrew into isolation to pray, he would open that tap, the tap of his container, at his Father's presence, and just, let it all out, So we can take, from his example, and we can practice that as well. We know that Jesus experienced human emotions, the stress, the pain, and all that. And we can read in Hebrews 4:15, that it says that we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weakness, but he was in all points tempted as we are, and yet without sin. So whatever it is, you're going through, the level of stress or anxiety that you might be dealing with, just remember that, Jesus went through the same and even worse things, but be encouraged to open the tap, to release that container at his feet, and let it all out. So let's make sure we keep our containers, empty regularly, right? Let's stay connected. Let's be creative in the ways that we are, connecting with each other. We're encouraging and exploring different ways. Life groups can be, in contact and all of that. Pray for one another. Stay healthy. Keep your bodies healthy. Eat well. Sleep well. We're sort of, forced to have a lot of time in our hands. So make the most of that time. Use that time in a wise way, and go to the Lord. Spend time with him. And don't keep that to yourself. Share with others. Encourage others. And let us, just make the most of this challenging times to grow in a new revelation of the Lord. And when we feel we're about to freak out, remember, come to him. Come to him and pour out, all the stress, all the anxiety, before him. So I'm just going to pray, and we will leave it at that. So Father, I just want to thank you that you love us. I thank you for your hand of protection upon us, God, and I thank you that you are with us. Your word says that you would never leave us. So I thank you. I thank you that, even from, the comfort of our homes, we can just, we can turn on some worship music. We can open our Bibles. We can pray, and we can, just begin to sense an increase of your presence in our homes. So Father, I pray that this will be a practice for every single one of us. Throughout this time, and even if it's something that people have not been doing on a regular basis, I pray that this will become a habit. So even when we come out of this, and we will eventually, of this situation, I pray that the habit will still be there. That desire to come to you, Lord, on a daily basis, and search, for that, fresh encounter, fresh revelation, Lord, of who you are. I just want to bless you. I pray that you have a great week, and that you will just experience more of that presence, of that love that he has for you. And we will stay connected. We'll see you again next week. And we're going to see how it goes. So I'm just going to have a look at the comments once again, see what people are saying here. Empty your stress container regularly. Very good. Good advice. Yeah, great great positive freak out advice. Very good. When can I get one? Oh, where can I get a stress container? Well, you have one already. Just make sure you have you make good use of the tech as well. All right, so bless you guys. Have a great week, and we will meet again next week. 10:30.